Hello and welcome to the This Experiment YouTube channel. This is the channel where I record field notes from my journey towards architecting my best life. This week, I'm going to be sharing my update from beautiful Xalapa, Mexico. So, let's get started.
Life's a foolish game. Do you ever feel the same? Well, maybe we could change. Turn the ship another way.
So, as I mentioned in the intro, I'm here in Xalapa, Mexico. Xalapa is the capital of Veracruz, the Veracruz region or state, or whatever it is. I should know that by now. Though I've only been here less than 24 hours, so maybe not. And what am I doing here? I am here taking a break from house sitting. I rented a room at an Airbnb. I have lovely hosts. I'll be sure to put the listing in the show description area so that you can see where I am and where I'm staying. And if you ever come to Xalapa, you can stay here as well. But I'm here just working, living, trying to learn more Spanish, practicing my very limited Spanish and hopefully extending that. And just exploring a new city, a new culture, and a new people. So, what have I learned this week? As I mentioned, I'm recording this on Saturday. I flew out from San Francisco on Thursday night. So, I was spending all day yesterday traveling. And last week before that, I was in Oakland. And so, I have several lessons learned from a week of living and traveling. The first lesson that I learned this week was how inspired and informed I am by talking about and really talking about literature and ideas and just systems and just talking at a really deep level about things I'm interested in. And so the example is I was staying with my dear friends and some homeowners who I house sit for in Oakland, and one of them was a teacher of writing at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. And she also is just a wonderful person. And we had these very deep conversations about a book that she suggested for me. It's called, by the way, the book is called The Way of the World. I provided a link in the description down below. But that just invigorated me. And so I learned how much I need to have those types of conversations in my life. More on how I started to bring those into my life in the What I Worked On section. The next thing that I learned this week was the positive effect of being very immediate and vulnerable with how I felt. So this week, a friend and I were talking about some meetings that we were having, or some, meetups we were having. And something she said about a third friend really got to me, and it was really, really bothering me. And normally I would have just let the story in my head play out, and I wouldn't have said anything, and I would have let the feelings just kind of fester. But instead, I trusted my friend, and I said, hey, I feel like I need to talk about this. And I did talk about it, and she explained to me the real story, what really happened, which totally alleviated any bad vibes that I was feeling. And so because I was immediate, because I was vulnerable, because I trusted my friend and I just was open, I was able to not feed kind of these doubts. You guys, I know you know what I'm talking about. It's when something happens, when somebody does you wrong and you're like, oh, so-and-so thinks they're so this, or so-and-so thinks they're so that because of this thing that I heard that happened. But in reality, there may be a whole story behind it you don't know. So that's what I learned this week. The third thing I learned this week is that I know less and more Spanish than I realized. Obviously, I'm nowhere near an intermediate level of Spanish, but I do know more. I do know enough to go grocery shopping in an area where English isn't really understood or known. I don't want to say understood. It's not a language they speak much of. So I know more than I thought, but I also just don't know a lot of Spanish. So I'm going to be working on that, as you know. And then the fourth thing, the most important thing that I learned this week, was that the world isn't as scary as our minds make it out to be. So when I told people that as a single woman, I was going to be like a woman traveling alone, I was going to be traveling alone to some random city in Mexico in a region that's where crime has significantly increased, especially kidnappings. people were a little bit like, are you crazy? And then I started to think, am I crazy? But as I did the research, as I put safety measures into place, and I kind of let go, I realized how not scary it really was. And I'll talk more about how that played out as we go forward in the video. So let's get into it. What did I actually work on with these lessons learned this week? So the first thing was the book, right? And how much I really need these sort of conversations and how much they inspire me. You know, I think a lot of, I should preface all of this with, I think for me, I have, a lot of the conversations that I engage in are pretty shallow. And that's not the other person's fault necessarily. It is my fault if I'm not going deeper with them. But because of that, I realize I haven't been feeding my soul. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there is a time and a place and an importance to pretty casual conversations. Like, I don't think all of conversation should be this deep, reflective, existential conversation. However, I realize I do need more of it in this life. So, oh, motorcycle. Sorry, it's pretty noisy in Mexico. You also may hear music and dogs barking at any time. That's the life. So I said to my friend after I finished the book that she suggested, like, let's talk about it. And we had this amazing conversation. And it was hard at times, you know. She asked questions that seemed pretty easy, but weren't. And I find one of the things I do when I have these deeper conversations is I get scared and I stop and I clam up if I don't know an answer or if I don't know the exact right way to talk about it. But this time I sat back and I thought, and I gave myself time before responding. And what unfolded because of that, and because of her patience, was this beautiful conversation that inspired writing. And hopefully you can see the difference in my blog post, which I release next week. I can anyway. I felt the difference, and that was really, really awesome. So the second thing I worked on, as I said, was this being immediate and vulnerable with my feelings. So reaching out to my friend and us having that conversation and her kind of clearing the air helped me realize that, hey, if I feel that I can't reach out to somebody close to me and have this sort of honest conversation with them, then maybe they're not the type of friend I thought they were. And maybe I don't need them in my life the same way. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm going to X them out of my life. It's more about, for me, taking stock of who I can and can't go hard with. And both of us in our friendships, utilizing that quality from each other to make ourselves better. So I did that a lot this week. You know, where with those people that I noticed I could go hard with, I went hard because I want to be better. I want to live a better quality life. And going hard doesn't necessarily mean calling them out or saying or feeling bad. It's more just like, here's what I'm feeling right now. Is that weird? Maybe, but I'd like to talk about it. Or how are you feeling right now? And I had a lot of friends, or several friends, go deep on some of their stuff as well. Some really dark, deep stuff. And I feel like that's just so enriching and makes life so much more meaningful. So I was immediate and vulnerable where I could be. So the third thing I worked on this week was, of course, my limited Spanish. I'm taking Skype classes, hour-long sessions twice a week over Skype with a wonderful teacher who is based out of Mexico. And I'm also doing lessons online. But the biggest thing is when I'm here, I'm trying not to default to English. And that is easier because I'm in a region that's not as tourist-centric. So many times I can't default to English and be understood. But I think the hardest part is it's exhausting, you know, and I know a lot of expats talk about this, but it is exhausting. And what I do is I put myself in the place of people who come to my country, the United States, and don't necessarily know as much English. And I have a lot of compassion for them and as I go through this journey. So when I see myself wanting to quit, I keep pushing myself forward and telling myself it's going to make for a more enriching and fulfilling experience. And so far, in the last 24 hours, it has. So, what is the final thing? Mexico, okay. It's more that, in general, things aren't as scary as we think they're going to be. Then again, that's only if you prepare yourself for the worst. Or prepare yourself soundly. I don't want to say prepare for the worst, but prepare yourself. So as I mentioned, I did a lot of research before coming to Mexico. I have a lot of friends who live here or who reside here. I asked about the water and what do you drink, what do you brush your teeth, and I was vulnerable and I went hard. I asked about being a person traveling alone and how do you avoid precarious situations. I did a lot of research on the internet. And then I put my game plan into place. I had 4 or 5 conversations going on WhatsApp with friends about where I was and what I was doing and making sure that they knew where I was and what I was doing. So, because I did all that preparation and I had informed myself, I let go. And I didn't let go, meaning I didn't let my guard down and I didn't just quit and let the universe take me, but I more like let go from a very prepared and informed place. And the result was instead of the result was this very positive, loving experience. Like I even said, this is a little bit even woo woo for me, but like I feel like I had angels along my journey. You know, I went to the airport at SFO and I didn't have a bottle opener, and the guy next to me, you know, helped me out. When I was on the plane from San Francisco to Mexico City, I met a friend who was visiting family in Guatemala, or I became friends with a woman who was visiting family in Guatemala, and she helped me navigate the Mexico City airport. Like I had all of these angels along the way, and instead of feeling like I could get attacked or something bad could happen at any time, I was on guard, but I also opened myself up to the beauty of humanity, which I think we're so often, at least in my country, at least in the States, we're often told like not to trust anybody or somebody's out to get you, or especially other countries they hate you because we have all these freedoms in America. And it's like, nah, people are people and there's beauty everywhere. And if you open yourself up to it without necessarily being foolish, you can get a whole lot out of experience. And so that's what I look forward to in the upcoming time here in Mexico. So next week I will be here in Mexico. I'm here for a month in Xalapa. I'm sure I'll have plenty of adventures to share with you during that time. If you like this video, please let me know by giving it a like. If you have some thoughts about travel or meeting people or positivity in a negative situation, please share it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear updates every week and see where I'm going to be, or, you know, I don't know. If you want to stay in touch, please subscribe and you will get video announcements each week. I want to thank Hans Adam featuring Snowflake for the music that I use in the intro and outro of this video. And of course, until next week, thanks for watching.